This is Jeremy and Nathan's Canadian filmmaking adventures.
Hey everyone, I am Jeremy Major.
I am Nathan Fleet.
And welcome to our filmmaking journey. So Nathan, real quick.
Yeah.
Let me just ask you a question. How do you feel about the word filmmaker?
Oh, I think it's fine. I know there's people that get upset with the word film.
Right.
Because it means film and celluloid.
Oh, yeah, okay.
There is a bit of a shift where people are using storyteller more as a broader term, like I'm a storyteller.
Right.
Right. And whether that's through movie format, feature format, short film, series, web
Metaverse.
series. Yeah. I consider myself a filmmaker because I'm in the world of movie making, I would say, whether it's composing or producing or directing or something.
Yeah.
But I like that term. I think people understand when you say I'm a filmmaker, they have a picture in their head of what that filmmaker does.
Sure.
I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think in certain circles, it's the term, and it does encompass a lot of different roles. But then there's the odd circle where I remember one time somebody asked me what I did, and I said, "Oh, I'm a filmmaker," and the response was like, "Ooh," because it was sort of like, "Oh, you must be broke." You know what I mean? So I think in certain circles, it has that sort of connotation, like you're the struggling filmmaker.
Arts in general has that.
Yeah.
Right? I'm a musician. Ooh, what else do you do?
Yeah.
What are you going to fall back on, right?
Whereas if you say, "Oh, I'm a TV producer," it's like, "Oh, dang," that's good. Anyway, that aside, all right. So we're good with the term filmmaker.
So we've established that we are filmmakers.
And we're bringing credibility to the word filmmaker.
Our filmmaking journey.
Today we are going to dive into the exciting world of pre-production.
Yes.
Which may not sound that exciting at first, but this is what leads into production. I think everyone loves production.
Yeah.
Everyone loves getting their hands dirty behind the camera, making it happen. That's a fun world.
When we get to the production podcast, I'll explain my thoughts on production. I'm not as fond of the production stage personally, but
you're a 9-to-5 kind of guy.
Yeah.
We'll get to that.
We'll get to that.
Banker hours. No. Okay. So, but pre-production is like so vitally important, but it's the fun of the acceleration, right?
Yes.
You're like ramping up.
Yep.
And you're pulling together all those pieces that are going to come into fruition just around the corner.
Yes. We've gathered our tinder, our kindling and our fuel. And
we're making a fire.
That's right. We're getting, really, it is. It's where things ramp up and it feels real.
Yeah,
Development can feel like, maybe this isn't going to happen.
Yeah,
this
you're right.
Really, am I chasing the wrong thing here?
Yeah.
But once you hit pre-production, it's go time. Like you know that
game on.
Yeah, there's something coming.
Some of the fun aspects of it, casting.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's fun and scary. You're bringing a whole new personality and life to these characters that were just words on a page.
Yep.
You got to have some money in order.
Yes.
That's crucial. There's a lot to figure out.
So, I think in pre-production, you have your technical, logistics.
Yes.
You have to deal with the financial component, personnel, and then creative, right? It's a creative process.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think if you look at that 5-prong idea when you're in pre-production, you'll have the team you want and the elements you need to have a successful production.
Yeah, absolutely. And at this point, your script is pretty much locked. Mm-hmm. You might have the odd little word here, that whatever, but it's pretty locked and it needs to be so everyone can do their thing with it.
Yep. So if we were to talk about like the logistics of it, is where you're going to shoot, how you're going to get there, how are people going to get there, and are they staying overnight or are they driving themselves?
Yeah.
Right. And that can take on a lot of work on its own. And, the places that you are going to shoot, do you have permission to be there? Right. Is there a cost to that? Are there permits associated with that?
Absolutely.
And that hopefully you have someone that can take care of that. Sometimes you might be the person doing everything.
Yep.
But that's one thing that you're going to have to really think about is the logistics of it all. Do you need porta potties there? Or is everyone just running over to the local donut store to have their bathroom breaks? Right?
Yeah, done that both ways.
It's not unheard of to have a low budget production and you think, okay, here we're filming here. There's a store just down the street that has washrooms and that's where we're having lunch and we're going to have our bathroom breaks there. And that can be an interesting process. I did a short film once. We were in the woods. Like we were in, it was a city sort of park
like, but a big city, like I don't even know how big this place was. It was a monster of a park and trees and everything else. And we'd have to kind of hike into where I wanted to film, which I may have underestimated what I put on the call sheet for the crew. And people were maybe a little upset because I thought it was, it's a 10-minute walk in. Yeah. No, it was a 20-minute walk.
Yeah.
And it was like a rough terrain and everything else.
And gear.
And gear.
You may have scouted it with a pencil and a notebook. And then you go in there with 300 pounds of gear.
Yes. Yeah, it grew just based on the weight of everything. Yeah, no, it's true. And then the weather turned and all this. Yeah. What I was going to address, though, was that we went to a neighboring, like not too far, once you got out of the woods, it was just a short little drive, maybe kind of a kilometer around the corner, was like an independent restaurant, like a bar, pub kind of place. And so we made an arrangement with them. Can we stay here to keep warm and we'll buy lots of food? Sort of thing. And they were like, yeah, no problem. Like they were totally good with it. We'll use your washroom and everything else.
So you set up a makeshift base camp.
Set up a makeshift base camp. Yep. Yeah. And put a nice tip on the meal at the end of the day. And, if you're doing it on an indie level, there's a lot of good like arrangements you can make like that. And people are generally happy to be involved in that way.
I think so. Yeah. If it's non-intrusive, if they see a little bit of money.
All right. I want to ask you a logistical related question, because when you and I were filming Wild Child, which is a TV show, you were directing it, and just so people know, the kind of format of the show is there's these challenges that kids do. They get a score with each one, and it's all outdoor wilderness skills challenges, basically. But you designed these activities, and you're an avid outdoors person, and I remember being blown away by your organization around these games. What's your approach when it comes to how to devise something like that?
Well, logistically, I went through all of them.
Okay.
So I went to, we shot in Hamilton at a conservation area called Valens Conservation Area.
Yes.
So I have a conservation pass. So I went there quite a bit. And so if it was the orienteering challenge, I actually did the full course,
right,
and timed it. But I even timed how long it took for me to walk from the car to that location, I was timing everything out, like how long it's going to take to get from here to here.
It's like a rehearsal.
And even the canoe challenge, I went out with my nephew. We got in the canoe, and we went through and we did the challenge and we timed it. We thought, okay, how long is this going to take? So how long should we give the kids to do this challenge? How did we get the canoe to the park?
Right,
into the water, to the other side of the lake, like everything. I went through everything,
right,
and imagined how long it would take to do it, and thought of pulling wagons of gear and
sure.
I thought of the challenges based on what you might do when you go camping, so that was kind of easy to think of what these kids were going to do. But I wanted to go through it physically, to see how long it would take to actually do it.
And I guess that's really what scouting is. You're kind of going out and like rehearsing, rehearsing the day, rehearsing the shots.
Where are people going to park when they arrive? Where's catering going to set up? So if you're doing your own location scouting, you're not just looking for that great, cool barn or something.
Right.
You're also thinking, where's everyone going to pee?
Yeah.
Right? Where are they going to park? Where's the gear going to be staged? If it rains, where are they going to go? If you have 20 people on your cast and everyone is coming separately, you need a spot for 20 cars.
Yeah.
How can you think of a carpool situation? So there's a lot that goes into it. Because Valens is not far from where I live, I was able to go there a number of times just to go through the whole process for timing. I mean, it was a 7-episode series we did, and we shot it in like 5 days. I think.
Yeah, it's true.
Like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just the level of planning you had. It made everything go so much better on the day.
And that's what was great about the pre-production of it, is that if you really do your work in pre-production, it makes production a lot smoother. The hard thing I found when you get to production is like, okay, here we are. How are we going to shoot this thing?
Yeah.
And then that could take an hour. But if you know exactly what's going to happen, you can just get there, start setting up, and then let the creativity flow on camera.
Yes.
That's really what I think when you do get to production, you really hope that creativity shines through. And then pre-production is the time where you really buckle down and really make sure that everything is planned well. I knew how long it took to drive there. That's part of the casting, was we wanted to make sure everyone was local so they could get their own way to the park, right? So that was all part of our planning for Wild Child.
It's true. And I remember you and I having actually a number of production meetings just walking the trails there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's important to do that. And we had some auditions that came from, I think, Alberta even. It was thanks, but we really need to keep this close to Hamilton, Ontario.
Yeah.
Obviously, the gear and who's going to prepare all that gear.
Yes.
And who's going to manage it. Are we renting? Is it owned gear?
Yeah.
So the technical side of things in pre-production, you have to really, really think about that. Everything down to who's got the 1/8-inch cable that goes from this to that. For me, two of the most important pieces of gear is duct tape and a Sharpie. The amount of times you need duct tape and a Sharpie is unbelievable.
Yeah. For me, I think it's my Leatherman.
Yeah.
Yeah. Always on your hip because you got the scissors in there, you got the knives. Then you got to be careful. You need the Band-Aids in the other pocket.
Yes, that's right.
Those things are sharp.
If you get down to that minute detail of things you need, you pay attention to the big stuff that you need.
Yeah, it's true. I also have this expression I say to people sometimes where it's like you're gonna talk about this project for the next several months, and at the end of that conversation, you'll have a finished show. It's just like you're just constantly talking about it. Even when you get to set, most of the day is talking about it. How are we going to do this? What are we going to, you know what I mean? The actual rolling of the camera is a relatively small part of the day.
Yes.
When it all shakes out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just getting everybody on board, having those conversations over and over. It just keeps evolving. You have to bring out some of the crew ahead of time, like to do testing, for them to get familiar with maybe it's cameras.
Yeah.
There was one shoot I did, actually, it was the same short film. It was the first time we'd ever used anamorphic lenses. And so I made sure we got our hands on those ahead of time. We went out, we did some tests, and that was a dream of mine, by the way. I'm an anamorphic nerd. But it was great, but you need that preparation time. You have to account for that in your budget to get people out to assemble their gear, to prepare what they need. Okay, let's talk about casting. That can be a lot of fun.
It can. You go with your experience.
Yes.
Let me hear your fun experiences first, and I'll tell you mine.
Actually, the first film I did, which was like a passion project, I'd been working in Toronto as a PA for probably a little over, I think a year and a half, something like that. And I just couldn't do it anymore. And I couldn't see this logical progression, at least it wasn't going to take forever between that and directing or producing. So I came back home and started my own thing. And starting my own thing meant hammering out the script. And my parents got behind it. My dad had just retired, so he was like, whatever you need, And they helped me a bit financially. We kept the budget ultra low, but they put a few dollars in that I paid back. And we went out, and it was kind of like this family project. We made this film. It was a feature-length film. I figured it had to be for it to like have any value to me.
Yeah.
But we needed to cast the thing. And I didn't know a whole lot about sort of proper industry methods for that type of thing. So I literally took out a small ad in the newspaper and said, we're casting this film on this day. And we rented a room at the convention center, which made it seem kind of credible, I think.
Yeah.
And actually the great thing to that was we got invited to their like annual, like for any of their clients come to this annual client event. It was the most luxurious meal, entertainment, all because of $150 rental.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So that anyway.
I'm going to make a note of that.
As an aside, I don't know if they still do that, but at the time they were doing that. So it was really like this open call and anyone could come out. We had casted a couple roles with friends and that sort of thing ahead of time, but there were a few kind of challenging roles. I needed twins in for a good chunk of it, like young twins. And, a number of other characters. Well, the funny thing was, because it was this open call, you get everything. Mm-hmm. You get people who've never acted, don't know the first thing about it. Mm-hmm. So,
how was that fun? Carry on.
It was. There were some laughs after people left the room. I feel kind of bad saying that, but
give me an idea of numbers.
We had quite a few. Like I'm going to say we had. Can you remember now? Maybe 60 to 80. It's just sort of off the top of my head. This is 20 some odd years ago.
Not bad for like a little ad in the paper.
Yeah,
independent film.
Yeah. So if you're willing to kind of have that open call, the funny thing was the guy we actually cast. He called me in advance and he said, "When's everybody coming?" Because we kind of had those from like 2 to 4 or whatever it was. And I said, well, I got a lot of people signed in right now from like 2 till 3. He's like, I'm coming after the cattle. It just stuck with me. And then sure enough, he was our favorite guy that day. But here was the funny part of the story. Right at the end, as we're packing up, this guy walks in and he's got like a maintenance man uniform on. And he's like, oh, is this the audition? You're like, yeah. come on in. So he does this read. It wasn't particularly good, but it was fine. And then as he's leaving the room, he's like, thanks, heads out the room, grabs the garbage can and dumps it into another. he was the like maintenance guy.
Wow.
Looking after the room. He just decided to audition on his way.
Wow.
You get all types when you do it that way.
Yeah. And I guess your advantage there is that you do see all types because you just never know.
Yeah. What have you got? Got some stories there?
No. So there was a short film that I produced years ago, and we were doing auditions at a place called Lift in Toronto.
Yeah.
And I think it was part of the ACTRA program, whatever it was called at that point.
Right.
ACTRA TIP or
Yeah,
whatever.
TIP,
It was part of that.
Yeah.
There was a lineup of people that showed up. There's a tremendous amount of people that showed up. There are some that just right off the bat, you just know they're not right. And it was hard for me to watch them and just knowing that like they're not right.
I know.
And and in your head, you should be saying next.
Yes.
But I couldn't say that. I don't want to say that. I know how hard actors work and how many auditions they have to go to. So after that moment, I'm like, I'm not ever going to do auditions. I'm just going to find people that I want to work with. And I can say, would you be interested in playing this role?
Yeah.
As opposed to auditions and turning people down. Sure. I know the benefit of auditions is that you do get to see people you didn't think of before.
Yes. Yeah.
By watching a lot of movies, by going to like local plays and stuff, that's kind of,
that's a great
I'm always
way.
scouting. I'm always making note that performance is great. I want to work with them one day, and I make a little note of it, and then I'll just approach people. That's my audition process.
More recently, like even just casting a couple of commercials, for example, and I've done this a couple of times over the years with various actor agents where I just go directly to them. Like I just choose one, and then usually it's because there maybe a slight connection there or whatever, and just say, are you interested in casting these couple of roles? Now, if there's a lot of roles, I'll go through a casting director. These agents, as long as you're paying normal rates, they get their fee and everything else, they're happy to just give you their people. Do you know what I mean? Here's some headshots. Let me know who you want to do a read. And then they send you the tape. And now everything's self-tapes. You're talking about wasting people's time.
Yeah.
The one downside of all this self-taping right now as an actor is they're casting the net so wide. I think they're seeing like hundreds of people for certain roles. Right. So it's a benefit to the filmmaker because the casting director can cast the net wide. But as an actor, you're doing auditions for things you're probably not even going to get half the time.
Yeah. And then, of course, it's union versus non-union. If you have a union shoot, that's a different route, different pay scale.
Which, by the way, you mentioned the TIP program with ACTRA, which I think was the name. I think it's changed now. It was like the Toronto Independent, whatever. They keep offering more and more options. So if you are doing something low budget, there are some programs available. Which it's great to work with the union just from like an experience point of view, and then to be able to do it at sort of a rate you can deal with is good. I'm all for people getting paid fairly for what they do.
Absolutely.
But sometimes there are projects where it's nice, where everyone is willing to invest their time and energy, get something a little bit out of it.
And people want to work. People want to do stuff.
People want to work.
Especially if you're the creative, mindset.
Yeah.
You always want to be working.
You do.
Right? You're creative no matter what, whether you're making a paycheck or not. You're always doing something to create. Carrying on with the finance part of pre-production is the money and where is it coming from and how much of that money is coming to you. You don't get all the money up front at once. It's a little bit at a time. So you have to really think about how the money is going to flow during the production stage.
You do.
Who gets paid right off the top, who has to wait a little bit, that sort of thing. And that's just the reality of it.
And I think at any level you're dealing with drawdowns, with whatever funds you're dealing with or broadcasters or whatever it is, they're going to pay in stages based on performance or deliverables or whatever it is. So you have to be able to map that out so you don't run short. Tax credits are often a part of people's finance plan.
Yeah, and they don't show up.
They don't show up for quite a while.
Yeah.
So there are lenders out there that specialize in bridging that for a healthy price. But you can go to a few banks, have media services, I think it's called, and they'll look at your estimates and various things and loan you a percentage of that so you can keep your cash flow and then recoup it for a price.
In the ultra indie world, we've all been in that situation where it's just all out of your pocket. You just you just, what do I have right now and how can I how can I cover it? There's always that one person who sees what's going on and they really appreciate it and they're like, you know what, let me get lunch.
Right.
Don't worry, I'll drive. I don't want your money. Every time I've worked on something, there's always somebody that says, you know what, I'll take care of this.
Wow.
I got it. Not that you can rely on that, but I think there's always somebody that is willing to lend a helping hand, especially in the ultra low budget indie world. There's always going to be someone that wants to help out with you because they feel that passion and drive. And
Sure. I think food is really important.
it is you can tell when you're on set when people are starting to their energy levels are going. The worst part is when food starts arriving when you're still working and you can smell it because everybody's mind is now thinking of when is lunch.
Yeah. We're just going to get this one more shot.
But it's a great obvious. Yeah, you have to make sure everyone is fed somewhat nutritiously.
Yeah. I always find, you have the bite to eat, you have a little chat, and then I'm just itching to get back at it.
I take a bite of the sandwich and then I got to stand up and look at the clipboard. I'm like, hey, what's next? What's next?
Just put your mind to work.
I find it hard to relax. Since we're talking pre-production, it's how are we going to get this food?
Yeah.
Dietary restrictions. You got to find all that stuff out.
Oh, it's true.
Right?
I know.
That's all part of the pre-production process. Things you might just assume everyone eats what you eat.
Yeah.
That might not be the case.
And now I think you're seeing more and more of the sort of individualized meals.
Yes.
Which you can really adapt to people specifically. When you don't have just the big buckets of pasta and whatever else that everyone's digging in. I've seen some caterers with really good options in that lately. There was someone we met recently at the film festival who came up to you and I after and he said, "Oh, I submitted such and such a film," and you stopped for a second, and then he said, "Oh, I didn't get in." And he said, "But I know why." And I've never heard anyone actually admit to this, but he said, he sort of shortchanged himself. He didn't spend enough money on his film, and he couldn't do what he wanted to do. But he did what he could do with the money he had, and he really didn't feel like it worked out.
That's interesting because that goes back to what's the style of your movie, how you're going to shoot it, right?
Yes. And there were some really intricate things in his film he talked about that he just couldn't pull off on the budget he had. So he kind of made these sacrifices, and it really hurt the project, I guess.
You're trying to fit your creative idea into a certain budget as opposed to thinking, how much do I need to execute this properly?
No, it's true. I think there are times where those limitations can drive you to better creative decisions that aren't necessarily the sort of first idea.
Yep.
Sometimes
Absolutely.
it's good to be pushed
to
be able for that to work for you. Sometimes you need a bit of time ahead of time.
Yeah.
Not just when you're in the moment, you're like, I can't afford that.
Yeah. Well, that would have been their thing to do in pre-production.
Yeah.
To really think it through, like taking the canoe out and doing the course and timing it, right? Is to actually in your head mentally thinking, okay, I'm on set, we're doing this shot. What do I need? What needs to be there for this to happen?
Yeah.
And that's what I do as well, especially in the warmer months, and just lying in a hammock. And I just imagine the production in my head. Okay, I get in the car in the morning. Where's the first thing I go to?
Yeah.
I got to pick up the coffee. I got to pick up the muffins or whatever. I got to load the car. I got to put the canoe on top of the car. So I just go through the whole day in my head. Now I'm arriving. Everyone's supposed to be there in 1 hour. What do I do in that hour leading up to it? And that's in that pre-production. I just imagine in my head what the day is going to look like and how long is it going to take for people to set up. There's always that moment where people first arrive and they just want to say hi to each other. Hey, how's it going? Oh, I was just working on this. And in your head, I'm thinking, hey, give them that 15 minutes to do that.
It's true, yeah.
Because everyone's going to do it anyway. So let it happen. Let them bond a little bit. So I go through the whole day in my head, right up to the end of, at the end of the day, we're picking up garbage.
Yeah.
And putting the garbage on the roof of the car because there's no room in the car. Where's the garbage going to go? And you plan the whole day up to the exit. It's like a time budget. I always do these time budgets in my head and then leaving those little bits of blocks of time for things that are out of your control that you don't plan for that just happen. It starts to rain or someone cuts their finger or something, right?
Yeah, because you have to know how long you need to accomplish certain things. And I think that part of that just comes from experience, I suppose, to just sort of, to play that scenario out in your head and like, we can do that in half an hour. And you're not always right. Sometimes you're at the end of the day jamming it all in. But
if you do that too, like when you put your producer hat on and you're on set and you're watching a shot happen and you're thinking what's coming up next, and you're like, okay, you know what? We've got 3 takes of that. One of them's got to be good. Yeah. We got to move on just because you've already thought the whole day through.
Yes.
And if we don't get to this part by this time, we're going to lose our light. And that happens with every film.
The approach it's that same part of your creativity in a way where just like you visualized the story and wrote the script, that way, right? With your imagination.
Yes.
You're doing the same thing here. You're imagining that day, you're visualizing all the beats of it, and then making it happen.
If you can sit around and visualize how cool your movie is and great shots that are going to happen, you can probably do the same with your time budget, imagining what's happening behind the camera the entire day in your mind.
Do you get nervous about that first day of production?
So when we do the production part, I'll explain that. But I like the moment from action, cut, and that's it. Everything else leading up to it and after, I could do without.
Yeah.
Because it in my head, it's a checklist.
It is a checklist.
Got to get this, got to get this. And then there's that little moment of creativity that happens on camera. And then you're back to the checklist.
Right.
That in my head, that's the way,
I guess to keep it in the pre-production realm, do you feel prepared going into day one?
Oh, yeah. I rarely do I not.
Yeah.
Because I do that mental thing where I go through everything, right down to the Sharpie and the piece of tape that I need.
Right.
Clipboard, paper, whatever it is. What I'm going to wear. How many pockets are my wardrobe? Right? Everyday Wild Child, just cargo shorts, and every single pocket was full of something. I knew what was in each one.
Wow.
But that's what I think of when I'm pre-planning stuff. So I'm not ever worried about production. The only thing I would worry about in pre-production is making sure that everyone's going to be there when they say they're going to be there. Because, you got a number of people.
Yeah.
All it takes is one person to say, I can't make it. And then you're, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Here's what we got to do now.
Yeah, that's where scheduling drives me crazy.
Yeah.
Just balancing all those things and communicating.
But generally, I feel pretty confident going into production.
Yeah.
Whether it's a music video or a corporate or a short film or a series or anything. Yeah. Like just the schedule, creating the general schedule for everything.
Yeah.
And that's, it's not always a fun thing to do, but it's a necessary thing to do.
Yes.
Everyone needs to know where they're going to go, when they need to be there. I know that's going to come later in production with call sheets and that sort of thing. But you as a producer need to know those things in advance because that's just how you prepare. Like you're over-prepared, I would say.
Yes.
You really should over-prepare for things so that when you do hit production, there is that somewhat level of calm.
Yeah.
Because it is a creative thing. You are creating some piece of art and you want some of that creativity to happen when you're filming. Like you don't want it to all be frustrated and everyone rushing around and trying to get things done and rush. You need that moment to breathe where people feel they can be creative, where the cinematographer feels they have that time to create something cool with light, or the actors some time to create something great with their character in the environment, which could be the first time they're in that actual environment, right? You want that creativity to come through and shine a little bit. So I think you do have to be over-prepared so that when you do get to set, there is that little bit of time where you're allowed to do those sort of things, as opposed to it just being the checklist that I talked about.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you do say action, that there is a little bit of time for that creativity.
Yeah.
You don't want to lose that.
No, that bit of spontaneity.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, and we were talking about with some of the planning and permits and that sort of thing. I can think of examples of occasions where I don't know if I'm trying to remember specifically if we were sort of creating a scene as we went on set, or if it was in the script and for some reason it wasn't in the schedule for that day. But I remember an occasion where on this film we did called Artless, we were doing a lot of exteriors and stuff. I think we were doing some stuff in cars, like prop cars we had, and we just needed this one shot of the one character in a store looking at baby things, baby clothes and things, because she was pregnant. And we just sort of needed it as a transitional element. And we knew near where we were that day, there was a little shop on this street. And so a couple of people just went to the shop and said, could we film in here for 15 minutes? That's all we need. And it was already dressed perfectly. We had seen it before. And so these people agreed to it. And the one guy, he had been in filmmaking. He had been worked in the film industry out in Vancouver or something previously. And he said, there's no way you guys are going to be 15 minutes, but come on in, do your thing. So we went in, one take. 14 and a half minutes later, we were heading out the door.
Oh, good.
But the point is, you do need a bit of room for spontaneity, because it's like as you're in the moment and things are coming to life in front of you, it changes.
Yeah.
And you can't always plan for everything. You can try.
Right. Yep.
But it's going to change.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
So your pre-production happened the moment you're in production. So it was a little bit of
Exactly.
pre, a
On
little
that
bit
shot,
of production.
yeah.
We're all at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when I was doing a TV series, City Commando,
Yeah.
and I directed a whole pile of the location segments in that series, like our pre-production happened at like 8:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
And by 10 o'clock, we were into production. It was like, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
You'd sit in this room and you'd figure out what crime element you were going to shoot and how you were going to shoot it and who was going to say
neat.
what. And that was it. Like we maybe had an hour and a half, and then we were in our cars off to a location which we didn't have permission to be in. Like,
Oh my
we just
gosh.
said, there's a road out this way. Let's go do it there.
Yeah.
And we would just go. And like, there was no pre-production. There was no budget. It was very fast paced, but that was our pre-production. Now, having said that, they already had their budget in place. So
Right.
no, I shouldn't say there was no pre-production.
Yes.
But there was no pre-production for me.
Right.
It was just show up at 8:30.
Yeah.
Scribble down what you guys plan to do that day, and then 10 o'clock
Wow.
something, head out and go do it.
Yeah.
And it was very, very, very quick. And
That's a real test of your skills to
Yeah,
make sure you
yeah.
get everything you're going to need
Yeah.
and not have to come back.
get out the maps. Okay, there's a park here we can use. There's a road here we can use. There's
Yeah.
someone with a fence there. Where can we find an ATM or what?
Yeah.
There's a lot of really last minute stuff, but it was like pre-production, then immediately into production.
Yeah, and that's kind of fun too. There's something about being in the moment and just having to figure it all out right then and there that's exciting.
And we pulled it off. Like we always got what we needed, which was good, but it was a good exercise for sure.
So if I have any lawsuits around locations, who do I contact for that show?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't even know if some of those locations exist anymore. The landscape has changed
Oh, it's true. Yeah.
so much. I wouldn't recommend that, not at all, because
Yeah.
at any moment, someone would say, you can't film here, and then we got to go find somewhere else to film.
Sure.
It was very, very fast-paced.
Which that's like documentary style in a way.
Yeah. And indie filmmakers, that's how they operate.
Yeah.
They sometimes just, okay, we're just going to get out and do this shot.
Yeah.
Right? I would say most of the filmmakers that are out there today wouldn't be where they are if they didn't ever do those low budget films where you just hop out of the car and start shooting
true.
a scene, right? That's how they learn. That's
That's where everyone starts.
Yeah.
Yeah. With the Canadian Tire camcorder.
with the Canadian Tire camcorder. That's
Yeah.
right. That's where they all start from, right? You can't be a 20-year-old filmmaker and you got this cool idea and it's your friends and you're going to a park and now you're thinking about, okay, I got to get a permit. Now I got to get insurance.
Yeah.
They don't think that way. And
We don't
though
even
that's the
necessarily
proper
know.
process.
Yeah.
But where are they going to get the money to do it, right?
No, it's true.
If they don't have the opportunity to just create something.
Yeah.
Being on a TV show that I was shooting, they probably should have had something in place as opposed to Nathan, go do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I was happy to do it. It's fine with me.
Sure. There is something about the purity of that. Like when you're starting out and you literally don't know the sort of, in quotes, proper way of doing things. You're just purely following your gut and trying to solve what challenges you need to solve to get the product you're looking for.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
And those Canadian Tire movies that I made, no, I shouldn't say Canadian Tire movies, the movies I made with the Canadian Tire VHS camera rental.
Yeah.
that I made.
Yeah.
If someone said to me, well, you got to go through pre-production, you got
Yeah.
you got your permit, you got your insurance. I don't know, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah.
That's not how you make movies.
No.
You make movies by hitting record and saying action. That's how movies are made.
Yeah.
I would have stopped if someone said that's how you have to make a movie.
Yes,
And that's
yeah.
the only way. You would have been, okay, fine, I'm going to do something else.
No, it's true.
But I can hit record on this and capture
Yeah.
an image. I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
It's not until you get older and you're establishing yourself and you're trying to think, look at that movie on screen. How do I get there? Or,
Yeah.
look at that great TV show I just
Yeah.
watched. How do I get to that level? And that's where you start to ask questions like, how do you do that? How do they get the money to do that? And that's where you start to learn
And
the process of things.
You do
right?
want to reduce the risk because it's sort of like when you're out there flying by the seat of your pants, there is an inherent risk to all of it falling apart at any moment. So as you get older, you put safety nets in place and you have to answer to people.
Yeah. And that's where, being really prepared in pre-production
Yeah,
can really save you when you head into production.
absolutely. On that note, we will be continuing to discuss the fascinating process of making movies in this great country, Canada. And we hope you'll continue to join us. Next time, we're going to be discussing the always popular production topic, the nitty-gritties of making movies.
And our experiences in that process. And we are on our journey making
Always.
movies here. So it's always changing, always new stories, always something new to learn.
That's right. All right, Nathan, it's been great talking with you.
You too.
Thanks so much for joining us, folks. We'll see you soon.